Good evening, Dynasty degenerates everywhere. I am your host for the evening, Rich Sickles, and with me tonight to pick up the pieces is the one, the only Jorge Edwards. How are you doing tonight, Jorge?
Man, I'm great. It's been a while, but it's great to get back here, especially with a lot of people starting their fantasy football playoffs this week. It's the perfect time to start talking about things dynasty related because, playoffs are playoffs, whether you're in redraft or dynasty, and what you do here matters.
That's right. That's right. No, it's we'll have to. Hopefully, what we get into tonight will help you bring that championship home if you are in the playoffs. I'm doing excellent myself. I'm really excited to get into some dynasty discussion tonight. We have a really interesting show for you. First, we're going to discuss the heated topic of trade deadlines, whether to have them or not to have them, when to have them. And then we're going to get into some players that we are targeting in the playoffs that we think can help you win your championship. So if you don't have a trade deadline, just a couple of players that we think can help put you over the top and that we'd be willing to pay up for a little bit. But without any further ado, let's do our best Pedro Serrano impression and crush this intro button out of the park.
So it's funny, as I'm reading the show sheet, I literally thought we were going to do impressions of Pedro Serrano, which I was not ready for. No, fun fact. So a little peek behind the curtain there, folks.
Right. Yeah. Yep. No, like to give everybody a little peek behind the curtain, talk a little bit about what's going on behind things. Before we get into it, I do want to tell everyone, like, subscribe, and review to catch anytime a new podcast or short drops from us. Starting in 2025, especially, you can search for all of the podcasts here on Fantasy and Frames by name wherever you listen to your podcasts. For us, make sure to subscribe to the Dynasty 365 podcasts. Make sure to head over to fantasyframes.com for the latest weekly IDP and Dynasty rankings, articles, takes, news, and notes. Speaking of news and notes, the first thing to get into is the news and the nugs of the week. There really wasn't too much that I saw. The big thing would be Bill Belichick going to coach in college again. What do you think about that? Do you think that has any effect on how other coaches start to view things? Do you think more coaches are going to go to college? We just had this conversation actually not that long ago. I could have sworn.
It's funny you mentioned that because as 2025 approaches and we're getting into as we'll start getting into the thralls of rookie evaluations and NFL prospect evaluations and combines and Senior Bowl weeks and NFL draft talk, it makes me wonder, years down the road, how many real good draft prospects is Bill Belichick going to pump out of the University of North Carolina? And are we going to be talking about North Carolina as some type of fantasy powerhouse, fantasy football powerhouse for Dynasty going forward?
Nice.
Just a heads up, everybody who's over on X, head over to our YouTube channel or Facebook. Actually, I think all three you can now comment and put your comments in here. So go ahead and do that, and we can talk to you and answer all your questions Dynasty related. We got a couple in the chat already. We got Vince. Good day, Legends. What's cracking? Just, what's cracking there, Vince? Me and this big-ass bottle of gin. This is what cracking tonight. I got my tonic water. I got this big-ass lemonade jug. I'm good to go, man. How are you doing, Vince? You got Toronto Dave in the chat. Is it a party emoji? I think I see. Yeah,
I think that is a party emoji. Yep, he is famous for them.
It is a party right here. Woo! Gotta love it.
Right.
What do you? Do you think they're going to pump out a lot of the college prospects that we're going to be talking about in a couple of years here, or are you reserving judgment?
I'm reserving judgment. I'm really interested to see how he goes from coaching the pros to coaching college kids. I feel like if anybody can do it, he's going to be the one that's going to be able to do it. He just has such a passion and love for the game. I think he's going to do it the right way. But it'll be interesting to see how the newer generations react to him. You know what I mean? it's going to be a whole different ball game. Like I think about people talk about Deion Sanders coming to the pros and how he's already said before he's not going to make that transition just because of the fact that he couldn't handle or not because he couldn't handle, but just because he doesn't want to have to deal with the egos of the grown men. You know what I mean?
Irony.
Yep. Yeah, no, that's a good point. That's a good point.
As we're getting ready to talk eventually prospects here on Dynasty 365, did you see the report that Shedeur Sanders was like secretly with his inner circle, like wondering why he wasn't nominated for being in the Heisman discussion? And all I got to say is look at the bling, because he didn't see anybody else kind of throw that up there. And maybe it was, what I'm trying to get at is maybe it was more like attitude related than it was performance related. Because if you're looking at performance, this guy balled out all year long. So it begs the question how much of the antics played a role in that or not. But yeah, it's gonna be interesting. Got Vince back in the chat. Did we see the meme of Belichick as Hans Moldman holding the skateboard? Cowabunga, dudes! I did not. I'm waiting for the meme of Bill Belichick after his team loses his first 5 games with Hans Moldman doing football in the groin. Oh, my groin! No, but seriously, let's think about this. Like, is this a situation where like he's just doing this so he and I'm stealing this from somebody. I don't know who I'm stealing it from, but you are out there, so just know that I'm giving you your due, whoever you are. But like, is this just his way of like trying to like understand the youth so he can get along with his like 24-year-old girlfriend?
I wasn't gonna go there. No, it's I mean, you know, could be. Maybe he's maybe things are growing stale and he's you know, out there recruiting. No, I can't even do the jokes.
Don't even save your dirty jokes for the Waiver Wire show on Tuesdays from 8 to 9:30 p.m. with Stacey Perez as host.
Right. Yeah. It's all Stacey's. That's the whole. I blame her for any of the dirtiness that comes on to Dynasty 365. That's just coming off of from Tuesdays with Stacey.
That's hilarious. Chapel Hill is a pretty cool town. They got some breweries. They got Top of the Hill there in the center of town where you can go up. It's like this restaurant / brewery. You can go there and it's pretty good. And they got some other divey places where there's this one dive place that I don't remember what it's called because let's just say I was pre-gaming pretty hard back in the day. And we got there and you go downstairs, like this narrow stairwell, and then you get to like this dive bar area, and then you got to like the massive beer pong tables in the back of the bar. And I'm just like, oh my God, this is amazing. It was probably the most well-prepared bar for a college atmosphere that I've ever been in. So definitely somebody to the point is definitely something for future recruits of Bill Belichick to get excited about, you know, going to the University of North Carolina, Chapel Hill, and all that comes with it.
Absolutely. Yeah. Yep. Yeah. He's going to, I mean, I'm sitting here saying, who knows if he'll be able to relate to the younger kids and stuff like that, but you know, he's going to be pulling in names. Yeah. I saw that. Keith in the chat.
Keith Fleming joining us again from the Daily Fix Show, our DFS show here at Fantasy and Frames, as well as the Waiver Wire show. He says the real Belichick UNC meme is dazed and confused. I get older, they stay the same age. You dirty old man, Keith Fleming. That is hilarious. I love it. More of those, folks. Keep dropping those in the chat. We'll love to put them on screen.
Exactly. Well, while you're all thinking of your next best meme, should we get into the show topic, number 1 of the night here? We got the trade deadline debate. So let's get into the first topic, the trade deadline. I would be remiss if I didn't at least shout out a nerd named Andrew. He is at Fake Footballs on Twitter and on Blue Sky. He helped me brainstorm this first topic of the evening. I was having a hard time trying to think of something, and you know, he came through for me. So I just wanted to say, Andrew, you're a nerd after my own heart. Thank you, man. Also, please feel free to jump over in the chat, like Jorge was saying. Chime in with your thoughts, any thoughts that you have on the trade deadlines debate, whether you think there should be one, whether you don't, any pros, cons that you can think of. Please throw them in the chat, and we'll throw them on the screen. We'll talk about it. But first, actually, before we get into that, Sean, I see Sean said something here. I appreciate you.
Go ahead.
Oh, I was just gonna say, I appreciate you both. I have Watt and Parson locked in right now, unless you think I should take one out for B. Wagner. Ooh, defensive question. This is all you,
Yeah.
Jorge.
This is called defense, the other side of the ball there, Rich. I know a lot of you fantasy and frames are averse to it, seems 3 people, including myself. So if it is a league where you get, big play rewards, like for example, 4 or 5 points for a sack, and you're pretty set at linebacker, you can make the argument of keeping both those edge rushers in there. Now, if it's like a league where you get like 3 points or 2 or 3 points for a sack, I would swap out Watt for Bobby Wagner just because Jalen Hurts is not exactly what we call easy to get tackled to the ground just because of his scrambling mobility this week. So hopefully that answers your question there, Sean. Thank you for tuning in.
Absolutely.
Vince, I love it. Vince, you're coming with it today. I love it. I'm a big fan. What's this defense you speak of? That's hilarious. I love it.
Oh.
Toronto Dave, I'm a pro trade deadline for playoff teams once playoff starts. Excellent segue, right, Rich?
Excellent. Yes, no, that's perfect because let's get into it. Jorge, where do you stand on the debate? Like, do you agree with Dave as far as having a trade deadline or not?
Back like in 2012, when the Undertaker was trying to get Triple H to take him on at WrestleMania after getting demolished by Triple H in 2011, Triple H said after weeks of saying no, finally came around and told the Undertaker, if we do this, we're going all the way. We're going to go all the way, hell in the cell. What am I trying to reference, folks who don't understand the wrestling reference? If you're in a Dynasty league, then you're playing Dynasty 365. See what I did that? Because our show is anyhow. Look, you're playing Dynasty year round, which means you're managing your roster year round, which that includes the fantasy playoffs. And you know what? At the end of the day, people can make the argument, well, it's collusion. No, it's not. Like, oh, well, you're influencing the nature of the playoffs and the seedings, and you're giving other teams advantages, yada yada yada. I'm like, when you join a Dynasty league, you are responsible for your team year round. And so, no, I don't think there should be any trade deadlines during the fantasy playoffs. I'm in a few Dynasty leagues where there happen to be trade deadlines, as a part of the league. Am I happy about it? No, but I play because I enjoy the league regardless. But that being the case, if I had it my way, no, like make trades, especially if you're thinking about the long haul. You get into the semifinals of your fantasy playoffs, then you got to start thinking, like how much is championship or really worth compared to years of championships down the road. Like, let me ask you a question, Rich. If another player in your league had Jamar Chase and it was like, I'm willing to give up Jamar Chase for a first round pick and on top of other assets, would you make that trade in the semifinals? Or let me put it another way. If you had Jamar Chase and somebody came to you and it's like, I'll give you 3 first round picks and insert another player for Jamar Chase, would you give up Jamar Chase in the semifinals and bypass that championship that you might have won the following week for potential years of success with him going forward?
Ooh, so you're saying in this scenario, I'm still in the playoffs?
You're in the semifinals. So yeah,
in the semifinals.
And let's just give Jamar Chase. You're probably, you probably don't have an equally as good receiver. So you're kind of stuck here because on one hand, you're playing for the long term for your team. On the other hand, what are we all playing fantasy football for? It's to win championships. So the question is, what do you value more? The long-term security for your team where you could potentially win multiple championships with elite players on your roster? Or you say, screw it, I'm turning down the 3 1s plus player and I'm going for it. But what happens if you don't win? What happens if you don't get past the semifinals? You just lost an opportunity to rebuild. That concerns me. I think I want to think the long haul versus the short term. What about you?
No, yeah. So that brings into question a lot of what Dynasty is built around, which is the fact that you need to, like you're saying, it's a year-round thing. You really need to have an idea of what your team is, where your team is going. I mean, you might have made it into the semifinals, but did you squeak into the semifinals, or did you like actually, earn your way into it and you actually have a competing chance with these other guys that are in there? Um, if I think it would be really hard for me, but it depends on what that other piece is that I'd be getting for Jamar Chase. Like the 3 firsts, I would want that at least for Jamar Chase. Like I feel like I would, if you're trading away Jamar Chase, you better be getting a a heaping pile of first round picks.
Okay, so I'll throw in two players' names. Okay.
Okay.
What was like 3 first-round picks and a JSN or Roma Dunze?
Yes, I think I would do that. Like if it's Roma Dunze or JSN, I'd be a little bit more hesitant on, but I do think that with both of them, I think that they're both great receivers. They just need to get into a better spot. So yeah, I think I would do that. Yeah.
What about Jameson Williams?
Mm.
Right?
I need a little bit more. I need a little bit more. I need like
more. Yeah.
Give me more. Give me more. Yeah. Like I want to say yes, Jameson Williams, but there's still a little bit of growing pains that's happening there. Luck, I mean, I will say he has really I've blown away my expectations this year. So that's why I was like I hesitated as much as I did because I was excited about that idea.
So let me ask you something going forward then, and I'll give you my take on it as well. For that extra player in this hypothetical trade scenario, would this for you have to be, if you had the choice of having like a solid wide receiver 2 or an RB1, would you take the RB in the situation in the trade package? Now, taking into account shelf lives of players and longevity and how wide receivers last longer, that's the simplest way to put it, than running backs. If the person offered you a running back, would they have to offer you a pretty high one, or are you okay with taking a wide receiver that's more of like a wide receiver 2 in the situation?
I'd be more okay taking a wide receiver 2 that had like high upside, like a Jameson Williams or something like that. I tend to, especially if I'm rebuilding, I tend to steer away from running backs a little bit until I'm in a position where I think that I'm going to really actually make a push. Then I'll go and buy my running backs. But yeah, no, I would rather have the wide receiver for sure.
Vince in the chat says, I hate deadlines in all formats, Dynasty or otherwise. Always need a chance to improve the roster and our future at all times. If others are asleep at the wheel, then suck a lemon. That is very PG. Thank you for keeping PG there.
Very nice. Yeah.
Yeah. Good job there, Vince.
Vince, I don't know if you know this, but we are actually in a league together. We're in the Dynasty Lab league together. So you've been making some nice trades with me lately. I just wanted to say thank you again. Thank you. But yeah, no, as far as I stand, like when it comes to trade deadlines, I'm out on the trade deadline. I'd rather have, like we've been talking about, I'd rather have it go all year long. Because of the fact that I think there's two things. One, like you're talking about, you need to be constantly trying to improve your team if you can. Like it's just something that it's Dynasty 365. It is all year round. But two, I think that there's something to be said about the fact that the value changes when like the playoffs get into it. And that's one of the reasons why I like not having a trade deadline, just because prices will start to go up at that point. And I've had some pretty crazy trades happen just because of the fact that there wasn't a trade deadline. You know what I mean? So,
right.
And yeah, like Vince says, if they're asleep at the wheel, if other people aren't making those trades, that's on them. In my opinion, suck a lemon. Exactly. So, I will say though, in just because we're both anti-trade deadline, I'll give a little bit of grace to the trade deadline people. I do like the idea of having a trade deadline as the playoffs begin. I have there's one that I just got into, and I made a trade right as the trade right at the trade deadline. that's going to help put my team at least in a better position to actually compete through those playoffs. So I feel like if you're going to do it, yeah, you got to do it right at the end, right before the playoffs start.
Yeah, okay. I'll make a counter argument to my argument / our arguments. At the end of the day, there is something to be said for league integrity. There is something to be said that you want the best teams in the league during the regular season in the playoffs. And at the end of the day, if you're not participating in the playoffs, if you're in the toilet bowl, or you're just done for the year, for me personally, I like sitting back and watching the matchups like on my phone and watching the playoff matchups, and just it's like I'm watching a game on TV, except I'm watching a real live fantasy matchup game on my phone. And I get excited about, like, okay, well, if I'm not rooting for myself, who am I rooting for in the league? And then I look at the individual teams' rosters, and I'm like, okay, who's going to be needing some assets after the season is over? Okay, well, now I'm really rooting for you, because you'll probably want to keep the train going, and therefore you're going to be wanting assets. Therefore, I'm going to be asking for a lot of draft picks going forward. So, like, it's a two-way street, but you're always thinking a step ahead or two steps ahead. But yeah, I mean, I like the idea of integrity. To give up, a haul of picks with a week before, championship game, that it would have to be a haul. If Jamar Chase went for like 2 firsts and Jameson, a JMO, or an Amon Ra, I'd be pretty pissed.
Yeah, no. Yeah.
So Vince says trades with Rich are great fun. That's the key for me. Trading should be fun, and that's what fantasy is about. So no deadlines, please. He says also, can I have a refund on Worthy and Jonathan Brooks, please?
Oh, thanks, Vince. That really means a lot to me. No, you can't. All right.
Love it.
Well, I think that about does it for the trade deadline talk, right? We kind of hit it there.
Yeah, no, seriously. But if you have a situation in your leagues where it's a point of contention about trade deadlines, drop them in the chat, or see you've heard stories, drop them in the chat. We'll be happy to talk about them and give you our 2 cents. And you could always hit up Rich at Rich Sickles, Gingerbread Man, GBM. Yes, I got it right. I didn't pull a Stacey.
Yes, you did.
And me at Jorge B. Edwards. We love to talk about Dynasty and everything about it and help you out there. But yeah, no, I think we covered that one pretty thoroughly, I think.
All right. Well, let's get into this promo here for Dynasty decks. As you get closer to winning those fantasy football championships, what better way to capture your victory and immortality than by getting your own Dynasty deck championship plaque? Dynasty Decks, or the dynastydex.com, provides fully customizable championship plaques for any fantasy football league, whether on offense or IDP. Use the promo code FRAMES and receive $5 off the purchase price, which is very affordable compared to the other market prices on other websites. Head over to dynastydex.com today. And again, use promo code FRAMES, receive $5 off. That's not bad. I like that.
It's really good, and it's really affordable. They are really affordable. I met these guys before the Fantasy Football Expo last year, and then during the Fantasy Football Expo this year. Just terrific individuals, quality merchandise, quality people.
Absolutely.
We're here at Fantasy Frames all about supporting the quality businesses, and like, again, fully customizable. You reach out to their help hotline or email address. They'll customize it to whatever. If you have 7 flex spots, they'll find a way to get those 7 flex spots on that plaque. They will make sure that you walk away happy with your product. And for IDP managers out there, people who participate in IDP leagues, they'll put in those players as well. You just tell them what you want, and they'll make it happen. So definitely head over to thedynastydex.com and get your championship plaques ready. Or if you're a league manager, you don't want to spend a lot of money on an expensive trophy. Having a pretty snazzy looking championship plaque goes a long way.
Absolutely, yeah, and that's just fun. like having the trophy and everything. I won my home league trophy once, and I was so excited about it, and I didn't get it until like a month before the season began, and I had to give it back again. But that 1 month that I had it, I was like, "This is awesome." I'm taking pictures with it, putting it up in my house. Like it's just another layer of fun to the game.
Waking up next to it in bed, screaming, "Oh my God, what did I do?" And I got you.
Hey, now I told you that in confidence. All right. Well, let's get into the second topic of the night. We're going to do some playoff trade targets. So one of the things that we did touch on when we were talking about the trade deadline debate was that if you're going to leave trades open in the playoffs, people should expect to have to pay up for their trades. So let's discuss some of those ideas. We talked a little bit about the Jamar Chase idea and how that would work with first and whatnot. We're going to give you some info with some data from DLF, Dynasty League Football, and yeah, hopefully this will help you kind of figure out some people that you can target to try to help your team in these last few weeks here. So, Jorge, how about you? What is first target for you?
So the first trade target I have that I'm really wanting to go after, and this is assuming that this is a super flex or 2QB, tight end premium PPR. I mean, that's kind of like the default setting I go by. And others may have different ones, but I think for the most part, it's safe to say that super flex has kind of swept the dynasty world more so than it has in redraft for now. But that being the case, I want to make a trade for this guy who I think come championship week in week 17 is the cheat code of cheat codes. Now, chances are in your league on your team, you have a good QB1 and a QB2, or maybe you're like me who has a Russell Wilson and a Kirk Cousins, and there's a reason why you're sitting on the outside of the playoffs because Kirk Cousins hasn't done jack shit in the past month. But I'm sorry. I had to vent. I had to let that out. I'm sorry.
Let it out. This is a safe space.
Let's say by some miracle that I had made the playoffs, I would have wanted to get on my roster a third quarterback, and the teasing is done. The third quarterback that I want to acquire right now is Bryce Young. Since week 12, he's averaged 17.9 fantasy points per game as the QB 14 versus Kansas City. Great defense of Kansas City, 16.5 points. Okay, Tampa Bay, not as great a defense, 23.6 points last week versus Philadelphia, 13.5. So by just looking at his fantasy performances of late, you're not exactly, thinking that you're going to be paying too much of a premium right now. But like you said, during the playoffs, during around this time, trade deadline or trades around the playoffs, people might want a little bit more. But let me tell you why you want Bryce Young right now on your roster heading into the fantasy playoffs. Week 15 versus Dallas. Dallas allows the fourth most fantasy points to quarterbacks on the season. Week 16, not as good versus Arizona, 22nd in fantasy points allowed to quarterbacks. But week 17, again, rematch against Tampa, first in fantasy points allowed to quarterbacks. Week 17, if God forbid, I'm still making it to the championship and I have Kirk Cousins as my QB2, I am swapping him out and I'm putting Bryce Young because I really do believe ever since he's come back from being benched, this young man has turned the corner, and we saw he was able to perform and do well against Tampa Bay. We're seeing the mobility starting to become a thing with the rushing yards. I'm not saying he's superstar, but he's somebody who should be quote unquote cheap and affordable for you to acquire for your rosters. Per DLF, Superflex DLF ADP, he ranks as a quarterback 30. Now, this is November data. They haven't gotten December's data up to date just yet, so keep that in mind. In terms of 2025 draft pick values in the Superflex tight end premium PPR, he's being valued at a late 25 second and an early 25 third. Players that are going around him in similar trade value are Taysom Hill and Juju Smith-Schuster. If that's the case, if I can give up a Taysom Hill and a Juju for a late second, all that combined for Bryce Young, I would make that trade. If I could do it, I would make that trade. I want Bryce Young. he's my secret weapon week 17 for this situation. I'm curious to hear what you have to say about the Bryce Young narrative I just threw up there.
I love it. I do actually. And I'm right there with you when it comes to, like, I was harping pretty harshly on Canales and the Panthers when they benched Bryce Young, because I did not think that was the right move. Like, I thought for sure they were going to ruin his confidence and that he wasn't going to be good until he got out of that situation. But he has blown me away the last couple of weeks ever since he came back, and was it week 12, right? He's looked like a completely different player. He really has, and it's been just great to watch. Like, he is what I thought he was going to be coming out of college. So I'm right there with you. I think, like, if you can make that deal, Taysom Hill and Juju Smith-Schuster and a 25-second for him, yes, heartbeat.
We got Roy's Kalam. We're just going to go with that. Apologies for butchering your name. He has a random start sit question, which we'll be happy to answer for you. Start 2 wide receivers: Jaden Reed, CeeDee Lamb, Adam Thielen, Amari Cooper.
So CD, I feel like you gotta. How's he been doing actually since I haven't paid attention? Last week he did really, really good, didn't he?
One second. I'll pull that up for you real quickly. Putting up fantasy points per game last week. CeeDee Lamb was receiver 11, 21.4 points. So yeah, I'd put CD. I actually like, though, Thielen in this matchup against Dallas. Again, like I said, 4th in fantasy points allowed. Let me go to the quarterback position, which only bodes well for wide receivers. Let me look at wide receiver fantasy matchups here for Dallas. 11th in most fantasy points allowed to the wide receiver position. Yeah, those would be my 2 picks, CD and Adam Thielen.
Yeah.
What about you?
No, I'm with you, CD. And I was thinking Reed. I know that goose egg last week really turned a lot of people off, and I know that some people are benching him. I still feel like you gotta, if you got him, you gotta play him. I'd probably go Reed and CD. Yeah, I like the Thielen take, though. I do like the Thielen take. We were just talking about him yesterday on the Waiver Wire show. So if you want some more in-depth dive on Thielen, go back and check out the Waiver Wire show from yesterday.
Rich, who's the player that you're targeting? One player that you're targeting in your during the
All right, so I went a little homer on this whole thing, and I went after somebody that was a Minnesota Viking, because I love my Minnesota Vikings, but also because of the fact that I really do think he's going to be good down the stretch here, down the end of the into the playoffs, into the championship week. You got Jordan Addison. Decent matchup for the playoff championships weeks. He's got the Bears, which they're tough but exploitable, and last time that he faced them, he put up 30 points. He's got to go to the Seahawks, and then he comes back and faces the Packers, which the last time he faced the Packers, he put up over 20 points. So I do think that these next 3 weeks are weeks that because teams are doing everything they can to try to stop Jefferson, it's leaving Jordan Addison wide open to do whatever he needs to do. And I don't think people realize that he's a wide receiver one. He's kind of like T. Higgins. He's kind of like Devonta Adams, who are just, they're wide receiver ones. JSN, Rome Odunze, wide receiver ones that are stuck on teams with other wide receiver ones. So, yeah, I really like him. DLF has a trade analyzer for him as a late 2025 first plus. I would happily give up my 25 first and a second, expecting them both to be late, to be able to get Jordan Addison. So I'd give up a first and a second for him.
So yeah, I mean, at this point, for getting an elite player like that, you're going to have to pay up there. So some might look at it as, potentially mortgaging the farm if you have to give up even more than a first round pick, because people could, hold you over a barrel and want, like, how badly do you want to win that title, Rich? Do you want to give up more than first? Do you want, first in 3 seconds or 2 seconds or something in a player? I would make that trade in a second. I want a title. I want to get my Dynasty deck from the dynastydeck.com. I want to get their plaque on my wall. I want to have that say that's my league that I won because I made the ballsy move to go get Jordan Addison during the fantasy playoffs. So yeah, totally with you on that one. Vince has a question here real quickly before we get going with another player. He's in Scott Fishbowl quarters. Pick 2, Tyrone Tracy, Sincere McCormick, Roma Dunze, or Patrick Taylor. Garendo is out. So
I feel like Tracy and Rome.
So Baltimore has actually gotten a little bit more stingy against the run. Earlier in the year, they've been pretty long. So I would probably, I'm going to be ballsy and say Patrick Taylor because I trust any running back in the Shanahan offense if Garendo can't go. Trying to look up one thing real quickly, so just bear with me.
Sure.
Insert music. I mean, man, I would love to say Sincere McCormick because what you call the head coach just came out today and said that he's going to be the legitimate RB1 going forward. Rome, I don't think so. Yeah, I think I'd go Patrick Taylor and Tracy. What about you?
I said Tracy for sure. I know Rome is hit or miss. You know what? I'm with you. You go big or go home. You're in the Scott Fishbowl quarterfinals. Patrick Taylor probably has the best bet or best chance of being having a big week just because of the fact that he is in that Shanahan offense. I'd probably go Tracy and Patrick Taylor too. I'm copying you.
I will say
the easy way out.
I will say if you tune into the Fantasy and Frames Fantasy Football Kickoff Show this Sunday at 9 a.m., one of our guys, Les Maynard, who finished, I want to say, in the top 7 in Scott Fishbowl last year or top 10, and is still in contention now, is somebody to ask that question to. Also, our very own Keith Fleming, first year in Scott Fishbowl, he's still in the bowl run. Somebody to ask the question to. We got some players here at Fantasy and Frames that are doing well in Scott Fishbowl. So tune into the Fantasy and Frames Fantasy Football Kickoff Show. Their events on Sunday. We start around 9 a.m. Eastern, and we go as long as we have to. We'll definitely help you out with this situation here. I know Patrick Taylor is kind of like a decision you need now because of Thursday Night Football, but again, I do like any running back in the Shanahan offense. Let's see here. Vince also says, I've been buying a bunch of J.J. McCarthy. Anyone attached to Jay Jettas and Addison and Hawk is going to be money. Hey, I agree.
Absolutely, yeah. Yeah, it'll be interesting to see what I love that the actually, you know what? We'll get into that in a minute here because he's coming up in a minute. Let's get back into your next target, Jorge. Who do you have next?
So in week 14, we saw him lead the team in rushing attempts. His team in rushing attempts with 18 for 55 yards and a touchdown for 13.2 fantasy points in PPR scoring. He's not really a big receiving threat. I'm talking about Tank Bigsby. Look, we saw before he got injured, he was becoming the RB1 on that team, and he was playing very well. Sucks he got injured for most of the year. That blows. The fact that he's not a big, receiving threat, that blows too. But that's also good for you as the person who's trying to acquire him. His fantasy football playoff schedule is kind of average at best. Week 15 versus the Jets, 22nd in fantasy points allowed to the running backs. Then he kind of gets some average which is bad, by the way. It's not a great matchup there. Week 16 versus the Vegas Raiders, they're 15th in fantasy points allowed to the running back. And then week 17 versus Tennessee, 17th in fantasy points allowed to the running back. So, somewhat exploitable matchups. And we would like to think that his 3.1 yard per carry average from this past Sunday will go up. He's just shaking off the rust here. But again, it's the fantasy schedule that is not as good as the previous player I was mentioning, Bryce Young. But because of that, I think even because people would still want to raise the price for a player during the fantasy playoff, I don't think I don't think managers are gonna be able to get away with that, to be honest with you. Per DLF, Superflex DLF, he ranks as the RB 48 in ADP with 2025 draft pick values of early to mid third round pick. Players a similar trade value. This is where it gets kind of interesting, and I'm curious to hear your thoughts here, Rich, on whether or not you would pull this trade for Tank Bigsby, as well as your general overall thoughts on Tank Bigsby. Players of similar trade value, again, according to DLF. And people, if you're not subscribed to DLF, great website, great resources. Definitely get the Fantasy and Frame stamp of approval.
Absolutely.
Zach Charbonnet, Christian Watson, Javonte Williams. And let's throw out a hypothetical scenario here. Let's say you need either running back depth, 1, or scenario 2, you're viewing Tank Bigsby as an RB2. So in a situation for depth, would you give up Charbonnet, Watson, or Javonte for Tank Bigsby?
No, yes. I would. I love Charbonnet. I when he was coming out, he was one of my top running backs, and I was so excited and so crushed when the Seattle Seahawks took him, just because he's been buried on that depth chart ever since. Christian Watson, I want nothing to do with him. I don't think that he is going to. I think he's honestly, I think he's a roster clogger. He was going to be. We were going to talk about roster cloggers tonight. We pivoted at the last minute, and that was going to be one of my top roster cloggers is Christian Watson. And Javonte Williams is getting there too. So, yeah, no, I would trade those two for Tank Bigsby in either of those scenarios.
Okay. Yeah. So I am with you. I would not want to give up on Charbonnet, especially with like the amount of time that Kenneth Walker has been missing this year and has been missing every year since he was drafted.
Right.
We saw Charbonnet with his first really, really good game last week. When given the volume. Like, I'm with you on Christian Watson. You don't know who in that wide receiving core. He's a big play threat waiting to happen, but he's also a soul-crushing drop on a big play threat waiting to happen. And I'd rather not deal with the heartaches or have to worry about making a decision whether I want to have my heart broken or not on a weekly basis. It's bad for one's self-esteem. And Javonte Williams, you'd have to think that the Denver Broncos are going to address the running back position either in free agency or in the NFL draft because it sucks. And you feel bad for him coming out of North Carolina with Michael Carter and the 1-2 punch they had there at the running back position. And we saw him have glimpses of I don't want to say greatness, but he was playing pretty damn well until he tore his ACL his rookie year. It's just a shame, but I'd rather take a chance on Bigsby being the guy for depth or as my RB2 than Javonte at this point.
Yeah. Yep.
We got a couple. We got Will in the chat. Will normally joins us on. Well, Will, I think you're taking over being a guest on all of our shows. Now you're on 365. We got Fourth and Frames next, and Shoot the Gap, and then we got the Fantasy Football Kickoff Show. He's just everywhere on Fantasy and Frames programming. So we love to give you a shout out there, Will. He says, "Brendo, lucky I was able to get Taylor in a weird way." Yes, you are lucky that you got Taylor in a weird way.
Right.
Actually, very fortunate for you. Vince is in the chat. What pick or picks would you be willing to trade for Juwan Jennings? Man, I would probably. The thing is that Ayuk is coming back, right? But we don't know that Debo's coming back. There's been a lot of speculation that he could be a trade target for the 49ers heading into the off season. But we don't know that. So speaking right now, as everybody's going to be on the team in 2025, I would say early third.
Yeah.
If maybe a late second. But that seems a little bit too rich. So I say an early third there for Juwan Jennings. Now, if flash forward a few months and you're telling me Debo's not there, now we're talking like, early, late to mid second. I think that would be a good comp there for Juwan Jennings based on how he's been playing and how he's kind of starting to break out this season.
Yeah. Yeah, I was thinking, especially if you're looking at, like we were talking about, trades right now, price should go up some. I think a late second, I'd probably that would be about my limit as well. But I feel like that would be a fair trade for Juwan Jennings. It will be interesting though to see how that all shakes out though. I mean, yeah, you got Ayuk coming back, you got Deebo Samuel, plus you got
Pearsall.
Yeah. So like,
yeah.
So yeah, it gets a little crowded there for sure.
Christian Dropson, he says, well, that's funny. So I want to, if you don't mind, Rich, I want to throw up this question on here because I have a slight tease I want to give people who are watching Dynasty 365 right now, which if you are, thank you. It means the world to us. Will says in the YouTube chat, as of right now, who is your Dynasty 2025 101 rookie pick in PPR Superflex? I ended up getting that pick via trade early on in the year. I'm loaded at quarterback, and I'm thinking I want to go Janty. Your thoughts? We have many thoughts, and we'll have many thoughts on Dynasty 365 and on the Dynasty 365 podcast starting very early in 2025. We're going to have a lot of people. You know, the Fourth and Frames crew, their redraft season is going to be coming to an end in a few weeks, and do not be surprised if you have the Rhett Manuels and the Drew Scotts and the Chris Battistell from our One Foot Down podcast or College Fantasy Football show, as well as other members of the Fantasy and Frames family coming on as we start talking about rookie and NFL prospects, start doing rookie mock drafts on the Fantasy and Frames draft show, which is coming back in a few weeks. So we're gonna hold off on that for now, but it's coming. That content is coming. We go year round here at Fantasy and Frames.
Yep, absolutely. Yep.
All right, who's your second guy? Second guy. Looking at the show sheet right now, another peek behind the curtain, and I'm noticing a little bias towards you here, but I'll let that go. Please continue.
Right. Well, it was a combination of things. It was a little bit of biasness coupled with a little bit of laziness, just because it helped with the whole. We're looking at the same matchups because my second guy that I'd be looking at trying to acquire right now to help me in the playoffs, and that I'd be looking at helping me further down the road is Sam Darnold. Again, like I said, he does have decent matchups for the playoffs. Bears will be a little bit of a tough one, but I think that he'll overcome it, especially because of the fact that they're at home. So yeah, he should have good value there. He's also going to have good value going into next season because he has definitely played his way into a starting contract somewhere. It'll be a question of where he goes. That was the thing I was going to say earlier is I'm really interested to see. There's a lot of talk now about what did the Vikings do if they continue playing. I mean, they're the quietest 11-2 team there is. Like, if they keep winning, what are they going to do with Sam Darnold? Like, it's so intriguing, and I cannot wait to see what happens this next season. I'm really torn. I don't know what to do. I kind of do. From the couple games that we saw with Sam Darnold where he was struggling, that still made me really, really nervous. So I'm still more than inclined to move on from him, but it'll be interesting to see. Anyways, back to the trade stuff. DLF has him going as a 2025 third. So I'd be expecting to give up a second, expecting it to be a late second because, you're in the championship, hopefully. So it should be a late second. I'd happily give up a second round pick for Sam Darnold, thinking going forward with the fact that you would have that value of him being a starter somewhere next year. What do you think about that?
So let me ask you, if you're like on the verge of having like the most awesome roster heading into the championship week, and somebody's like, but your quarterback, like it's been the other players on your team besides your second quarterback that's been helping you get there, but you really want to knock this out of the park. You want to make sure there's no doubt at all. You want to outscore your opponent by at least 30 points or 25 points. And the Darnold manager is like, hey, you can have him. You can have your title. All it's going to take is a high second. All it's going to take. Do you start saying, F it, I'm in. I want this too badly? Or do you start saying, you know what? I'm going to ride with what got us here. So thanks, but no thanks.
Yeah, if it's a high second, I'm probably out on it at that point. Because there is still question marks around Sam Darnold of whether or not he'll regress to being who is he really going to be the next Baker Mayfield, Geno Smith, or is he just someone that's on their way out the door? You know what I mean? And just happens to be playing with one of the best teams, one of the best offenses in the league right now. So I
See,
wouldn't do it for a high second now.
See, and you brought up a really good point, because you brought up two good points. Well, several good points, but the two that I want to highlight here is, see what I did there? That's called getting yourself out of a jam, people. Please practice. You mentioned Sam Darnold being a potential starter somewhere else. Like, let's say the Raiders don't draft Shador or some other rookie quarterback. Let's say they do Raiders things and they bring in Sam Darnold. Like, I truly believe Sam Darnold is a product of this offense on this team, being surrounded by elite weapons, having great coaching, and he goes someplace else and he becomes a backup again. It's like, well, you're not giving me any, you're not selling me here on his long-term prospects. Now, you say no on the high second. For me, I think I would. And I understand that's kind of like risque, and like, you're like, what are you doing? You're your second round fantasy draft pick for a guy that could help me get a title next week, because the guy puts up 20 plus fantasy points like on the regular, like it's nothing. Like, are we here again? It goes back to what we were talking about earlier on the show in regards to trade deadlines. Are you here to play Dynasty because you're thinking about 2 to 3 years down the line? Or are you playing Dynasty or any form of fantasy football to win a championship? And so it comes down to, and I think the example I was using earlier was the Jamar Chase example. Like, would you give up everything for a chance at a title? Or, what matters more to you? Having that certainty, or as close to certain as you can be on the chances of getting a title this year with having an elite quarterback? Or do you want the potential certainty multiple years down the road? In this particular case, I don't think Darnold gives you that potential certainty down the road, because you just don't know where he's going to be or what he's going to do. So if this guy wants to hold me over a barrel, I think I might take it, just because I want to win now, because there's not a later for Darnold down the road.
That's a good point. I like that. And that's, I mean, like, that kind of goes into the whole conversation of what window are you in? Are you in? Are you looking at it like a 3-year window up for your entire team, or are you looking at something like, this was a fluke and I can't believe that I'm here right now and I better do something if I want to try to win this championship this year? Like, right. Yeah, go all in for it. I'm with you with that. Like, I've every championship that I have won, I've gone all in on it. Like, you gotta.
No, I'm with you. And Chris Battistell, who will be a special guest here in a few minutes on Fourth and Frames. Please don't leave the Fantasy and Frames YouTube channel or X channel or Facebook channels tonight. We got 3 hours of shows back to back to back, covering every single aspect of fantasy football. Chris Battistell, the host of the 1 Foot Down College Fantasy Football podcast here at Fantasy and Frames, who did a fantastic job this year launching it. Like I said, he'll be the guest on Fourth and Frames next. He says it best: flags fly forever. You know what I mean? Like, yep. You're in it to win it, or you're not. So that's at least how I view it, and apparently Chris views it, and Rich, that's how you're viewing it. And so I'm hoping people listening or in the chat, they see it this way. But again, everybody has an opinion. We're not here to tell you what's right or wrong. We're just telling you what the hell we think. So you can either like that or not like that.
Yep. Well, I think we hit it. We hit some good spots. We had some good talks. I just want to thank everyone real quick. Unless, is there anything else that you wanted to say before we go?
No, again, not just first of all, everybody who's watching, thank you. We understand This is redraft season for most of you. Talking Dynasty doesn't really heat up for a lot of people until the new year. The fact that all 100 plus of you are watching right now across our various social media platforms, that means the world to us. So thank you for dropping by on the beginning of Fantasy and Frames Wednesdays. You all are why we do this, and we're happy to put in the time and the research that you all you all are here for. You're here for the analysis. We're here to do our best. And so thanks a lot. And again, in the new year, you can subscribe to this podcast, the Dynasty 365 podcast. So just keep that in mind. But that's pretty much it. What do you got, Rich?
Well, I too. Actually, before I get into it, I did want to say real quick, Vince, congratulations on moving Jennings for a mid-second. Congratulations, sir. Congratulations. I also wanted to just echo, Jorge, what you said. Thank you, everyone who's watching, whether you're on YouTube, you're listening from one of your favorite podcasts, you're on Twitter right now, or X, or Facebook, wherever you're at. Thank you so much. You can follow us on Twitter or X. I am at Rich Sickles GBM. That's Rich Sickles Gingerbeard Man. Or you can find me at richardsickles.bsky.social on Blue Sky. Jorge is at Jorge B. Edwards on Twitter and X. What are you at on Blue Sky?
I'm also bedwards.bsky.social.
There you go. There we go.
Yeah.
Also, be sure to visit the fantasyandframes.com website. Subscribe to the show on YouTube or wherever you consume your favorite podcasts. While you're there, please like, comment, subscribe, leave a review. Honestly, we really do appreciate any feedback that you have for us. We would really love to hear what you think about the show. And like we were saying, like all the shows in Fantasy and Frames, we're Dynasty 365 kicking off your Wednesdays. After us is Fourth and Frames for your redraft content. Then you got the Shoot the Gap for your IDP content. Later on, you'll have the Daily Fix for the DraftKings DFS. I believe that show is on Friday, right?
Friday at 9 p.m. Eastern, yep.
9 p.m. Eastern. And then also tune in on Tuesdays for the Waiver Wire show where you can catch me and the gang with Stacy. All right. Well, that's about it. Thank you again, everyone, for watching. I think that's about it. Jorge, you want to hit that music and give us some glorious tunes to see us out?
Absolutely. All right, y'all. We'll see you next week. Take care.